This is a little bit of a long video, but I want to make sure that you listen to the whole thing. It's very important. As of July 1st, 2024, the Iowa legislature passed a exclusive buyer's agency agreement. This is in reaction to the class action lawsuit that the National Association of Realtors had with a couple of sellers. I'm going to kind of explain this. This is a document that has to be signed before I basically give you any services pertaining to looking for a house, or definitely before showing a home. The buyer's agency acknowledgement, basically what it starts off by saying is, do you have an exclusive buyer agency agreement with any other realtor that you have looked at homes with or made contact with? Because if you do, you need to find out if that agreement has expired, or we could actually enter into a buyer's agency agreement. I kind of want to talk about the buyer's appointed agency disclosure. Basically what this covers is that I represent you in your best interest in the purchase of your home. I have to disclose anything that I know about the house, and my fiduciary duty is to put your interest first, and especially above mine. There's a possibility of a dual appointed agent to a buyer. I partner with Robin Zaver. She's a licensed agent. It could be myself or Robin showing you houses, and we just want to address it up front that we both work in your best interest. There's a possibility of dual agency. That means that if you look at a house and I have it listed, I could represent you and the seller at the same time. Typically what I do in that situation is I would refer the seller off to probably Robin or another agent in my office to keep it fair with negotiating. Also, if there's other offers, to keep it fair as well. Of course, my job is to get the house bought for you with the best priced and terms that you're comfortable with. The other thing that I have to do is I have to work with everybody in honesty and integrity and everything within the law. So I need to disclose any material defects that I know about the house to you, any backstories about the house. I've had an example of a house that I sold years ago and buyers wanted it, and the sellers never did fix the repair items that were supposed to be fixed last time. Now I'm going to kind of jump into, that was basically the short version of the buyer agency agreement. Now this is the agency consent and buyer agreement. Basically, with your approval, you are appointing myself, Scott Wendell, and Robin Zaver to represent you as your exclusive realtors to find you a home. Basically, what that means is that we could represent you in the purchase or acquisition of real estate in Iowa. We also might, for example, if we're out of town, both of us are not able to show, we can appoint another agent within our company to show you a house in case time is of the essence, you need to get in right away. I talked a little bit about dual agency, and that again covers if we have a house listed and you as a buyer would like to look at it, that we could represent you on both sides. There's also limited broker dual agency, where another broker might consent to another agent showing it outside our company, but we do not allow that with our company policy. Agency relationship. Broker representation of buyer for the purchase of real property shall be exclusive. Buyers may not enter into an agency relationship with another real estate firm during the term of this agreement. Now, you're probably wondering what all that means. So we get into the buyer brokerage agreement portion of the form. This, basically the way that I typically work it is that I would represent you in looking at any homes that are out there. If for some reason you were in a home previously and signed a buyer's agency agreement with them, we need to know which properties are exempt so we don't show it, because the other agent that if you signed an agreement with, which they should by law, they would be the ones that would be representing you and do compensation. I usually set up terms like a listing. I can do it up to a year, where I'd work on your behalf for a year. Hopefully your motivation and time frame, it will be within that time frame. But 6 months, it's completely negotiable. If you are just looking at one house, I would still have to have a buyer's agency agreement done for that house specifically. Like, for example, a sign call or something like that. Compensation. So this is the biggest issue in the National Association of Realtors class action lawsuit. Basically, what sellers said is, why am I paying a buyer's agent? I am paying to list the house to get it sold. In the state of Iowa, typically there's a commission amount that is agreed on by a seller. The seller, in their best interest, hopefully has a buyer's agency compensation on the other side of the transaction. You know, just using round numbers, let's say you have a listing that the listing agent would get 3%, the buyer's agent would get another 3%, so a total of 6%. I set my contracts up where my compensation, I ask for 3%. I feel that my 28 years of experience, knowledge, and just the network of people that I know and homeowners in areas that I know is totally worth it. All I can say is I know that anybody could help you, but also it's a lot easier to work with somebody that knows what they're doing instead of somebody that is desperate for the business or they don't know what they're doing. It could cost you a lot more in the long run. So how do I get compensated for that 3% buyer's agency fee? Majority of the time, the seller's going to pay for it. Basically, what we do before we show homes is we will look up information to find out if a seller is compensating a buyer's agent like myself to work in your behalf. If there is not a buyer's agency compensation that the seller is willing to pay, then we have to negotiate that kind of like closing cost to get the fee paid for. A majority of the time, and this is so new, the sellers are already paying a commission. It could be a smaller amount, like 1.5 to 2.75. I've seen a bunch of different variations of it. There is a possibility that a seller might be offering more than the 3% commission. I know builders sometimes, as incentives, or some sellers, they might offer a 3.5 or even 4% commission to be paid to the buyer's agent. And that is completely negotiable. What I am looking for and agreeing on is that I will work for you for 3%. If it goes above that 3% of buyer's agents being compensated, we can figure that out where either the money goes towards the brokerage, who I work for, or we can have that as closing cost credit to you. Now there's that option where the sellers aren't going to offer any compensation. That gets to be the difficult part where I'm still going to be looking for a fee for the amount of time and work that I've done and to make sure the whole transaction moves slowly. Not slowly, but efficiently to get closed and so you can move in and hit your close date. That is completely negotiable as well. I've been in this business for 28 years. I am not going to let money stand in the way of my clients getting the house that they want. I'm sure we can work out an agreement on that, and that is completely negotiable as well. Listings, showings, and VA financing. This is the portion where if you do not want me to show you homes that the seller is not offering a compensation to the buyer's agent to work for you, then we can do two things. We can either skip that house completely because sometimes that 3% outside of closing or during the closing on top of the down payment could be a lot to absorb. Hopefully, I can get that negotiated. You could also opt out. If they don't offer any compensation at all, we will not be obligated to show that house because there's not enough money in the whole equation to get things done. The tricky part on VA financing, for a few of you VA buyers out there, that buyer's agency commission can be figured into the purchase agreement, but there are limits on how much concessions a seller can basically give back to a buyer. Compensation terms. So let's say we have this agreement set up for about 6 months. We get to the end of the 6 months. We didn't find you a house. If you don't want to extend it, I showed you a bunch of homes. I can put those homes on a reserved list or basically a protected seller list. I would have to provide the address, the name of the seller, and if you decided to buy a home like that within 180 days after our representation agreement has expired, then I could still be due a commission as well. There is also an option of getting compensation from multiple parties. It could be a seller, it could be another agent. Again, that's negotiable and as needed per basis. Best efforts. Basically, you are signing an agreement for me to work in your best interest. I am obligated to do certain things for you as well. As an appointed agent, agree to use the best efforts to locate suitable property for purchase or acquisition that meets the price and other criteria of you as the buyer as furnished by the information that you gave me. My role is viewing property with the the buyer's role on this portion is that you agree to look at property with myself or with Robin or an appointed agent that we may have gave you because we were unable to show at a certain time. Allowing appointed agent to identify, negotiate, and offer for you and represent you. Providing an appointed agent with reliable information. We just need information on the buyer's side yourself so we can make sure that everything goes through smoothly and there's no hiccups along the way. Also, making yourself available. I know schedules are hard to move around. Robin and I are full-time agents. We are flexible. We have to show sometimes early morning, lunch hour, at night, weekends. We will work for you to make sure that your schedule will allow to look at homes. There might be other appointed agents. Well, basically, as an appointed agent for you, if there are other agents out there that are trying to solicit your business, trying to have you break your buyer's agency agreement, if you would let us know that, and some builders also try to do that as well, we just need to know that where the source is coming from. Of course, we can't discriminate based on race, color, creed, religion, national origin, handicap, or familial status. So basically, that comes down to our last page here, the attorney fees. Of course, this is a legally binding contract, and it covers the attorney fee issue in there. One thing also, and a lot of brokerages do this, there's a buyer's brokerage or buyer's administrative fee. This basically says that buyers agree to pay RE/MAX Precision an administrative fee of $550 on the purchase agreement, or is stated on the purchase agreement, to cover costs to obtain and process closing information, administrator closing and compliance, make government filings, apply towards licensing and insurance costs, and maintain records in accordance with government regulations. By law, we are supposed to hold all records for 5 years, and that covers storage fee as well in case there's an audit. If you have any questions at all regarding the new buyer's brokerage agreement or appointed agency, or if you have any questions just being hesitant about signing this document, please reach out to me. This is a new law. You cannot look at a house unless it's an open house without a signed written agreement. Other than that, I can't wait to get started to work for you. Thanks.